Hello! Today I'm going to talk about my favorite band and their debut self-titled album. That's the album that people usually think of when they hear the name The Doors. It is also from where Jim Morrison's most iconic pictures came from, and I'm pretty sure almost everyone knows at least one song from it. But not so many people know the story behind it, so I thought it would be fun to share some interesting facts and just to talk about it because, as I said, The Doors is my favorite band, this is my favorite album, and I just love discussing it. So yeah, let's move to the story. Everything pretty much starts at university. Both Jim and Ray studied at UCLA. They weren't super close there, but they knew each other. Both were into movies and dreamed of becoming successful filmmakers. But after graduation, Jim Morrison drifted into a free lifestyle and mostly did nothing. Meanwhile, Ray was hustling with his small band, playing little gigs with his brothers, and was trying to break into the local scene. One afternoon, during a walk on Venice Beach, they ran into each other by chance, started talking about what they were up to after graduation, and Jim admitted he had been writing songs. Ray asked him to sing one. Nervously, Jim sang a few lines of Moonlight Drive, and Ray was stunned. He immediately offered Jim to start a band together. Now, at that time, the band wasn't called The Doors yet, because, as I said, Ray already had a band with his brothers, which was called Rick and the Ravens, and that's exactly the band Jim Morrison joined. Soon, thanks to meditation classes, they invited John Densmore to join them, and since Rick and the Ravens had a contract with World Pacific, all this crew went to the studio in Los Angeles, and in about 3 hours they cut 6 songs. Moonlight Drive, End of the Night, Go Insane, Summer's Almost Gone, Hello, I Love You, My Eyes Have Seen You. Only 3 acetate demo copies were pressed, and yes, you can actually hear this demo today on YouTube. But even with this demo in hand, the band ran into a big problem. Every record label they approached turned them down. No one wanted them, and soon enough, Ray's brothers dropped out of the band, and it seemed like this little experiment might be over before it even began. Luckily, John Densmore had an idea. He remembered a friend from meditation classes called Robbie Krieger, and so by late 1965, the classic lineup was formed. Robbie Krieger, guitar, John Densmore, drums, Raymond Zarek, keyboards, organ bass, Jim Morrison, vocals. With this lineup set, they started digging around Los Angeles, and in 1966 they got their first real shot, a contract with Columbia Records. But here's the twist. Back in those days, labels would sign dozens of bands just to see if any of them would work out. So Columbia didn't really record them, didn't promote them, didn't do anything. And Jim, of course, decided to take the situation into his own hands, and before the meeting with the Columbia executives, he took a bunch of acid, came back later to the band and told them that he nailed it and that everything is going to be perfect. But the next day, they got fired. And so the band started going around to every club in town, begging to play just anywhere, and eventually they found the London Fog. By that time, The Doors already had around 25 original songs, including Light My Fire, The End, and Break On Through, along with about 5 covers like Gloria and Backdoor Man. During their time at the London Fog, they polished all these songs as much as possible, but unfortunately, soon enough, the club was on the verge of bankruptcy, and it just so happened that at the same time, the Whisky Go-Go needed a new house band. Ronnie Hayren arranged an audition for The Doors with the club's owner, but the band didn't exactly impress him at first. But he gave them the job anyway, mostly as a favor to Ronnie. That's actually where I want to point out that women played a crucial role in the Doors' early success, and Ronnie Hayden was one of the most important. Since Jim got the band fired from the Whisky quite often, she did everything to bring them back. She asked the groupies to make 15 calls a day to the club's owner, asking things like when are the Doors going to play, when are they going to be back, and so eventually the constant calls wore him down and he rehired them. Ronnie also managed the band Love, who were already signed to Elektra, so she had connections with the label boss Jack Holzman, and one night she brought him to the Whisky while the Doors were on stage, and he told her, "When I saw Love, I knew I wanted this band, but the Doors, they don't do it for me." Yet he kept coming back night after night. He saw that the crowd was mesmerized, everyone was worshipping the Doors, and finally Holzman signed the Doors to Elektra Records for 4 albums, bringing in Paul Rothchild as their producer and Bruce Botnick as an engineer. That was the moment the Doors' recorded history truly began. With Elektra behind them, the Doors finally had the resources to start recording seriously. In August 1966, they went into Sunset Sound Records in Los Angeles, and the recording went really quickly, because the band had already played the song live so many times that in the studio they came together very easily. The guys finished recording the album in 6 days, the mixing took another couple of weeks, but the fully ready-to-go album ended up just laying at the studio for almost a year. The record label planned a deliberate release strategy. This involved creating a large promotional billboard on Santa Monica Boulevard and sending the band on a promotional tour to build anticipation for the album's release in the new year, when they felt it would have a better chance for sales. Speaking about a promotional billboard, this was a completely new idea to the record business. At that time, no one in music had tried anything like this before. And so, to make this happen, the band needed striking images, and that's where Joe Brodsky came in. While Guy Webster shot the front album cover, Brodsky handled the billboard and the back cover. The photos he took captured Jim Morrison at his absolutely prime, the dark poet and rock star we all imagine. It is the image of Morrison that became the face of the Doors in popular culture. Ironically, Morrison hated photo shoots. He found them tedious and felt really uncomfortable being posed or directed. And that's why this album cover is so unique. It is the only Doors album where you can actually see the band clearly. On almost all their other albums, the photos are blurred, taken from a distance, or just very abstract. But for this debut, both the music and the visuals were finally coming together, and the world was about to see the Doors in a completely new way. In January 1967, Elektra finally released the album, preceded by the single Break On Through. But it didn't do much, partly because the line "She Gets High" kept it off the radio. The real breakthrough came a few months later with Light My Fire. It was originally a 7-minute song, which was way too long for radio, but for an extremely talented producer like Paul and engineer Bruce, it wasn't a big problem. They carefully edited it down to about 3 minutes, and soon enough, Light My Fire became a #1 hit, staying at the top of the chart for an entire month. But instead of talking about the album as a whole, I want to go song by song, because each track is special and has its own story. Break On Through. This song is inspired by the book The Doors of Perception, which references William Blake. The lyrics are about breaking free from what holds you back and experiencing life more fully. This idea of pushing past limits, exploring life without boundaries, and searching for something beyond the ordinary was basically Jim's philosophy. It is how he lived, how he wrote, and how he performed on stage. So it is basically a statement of Jim's whole approach to life and art. Soul Kitchen. Jim wrote the lyrics as a tribute to the food restaurant Olivia's in Venice Beach. He often stayed there too late and the staff had to kick him out. Hence is the line, "Let me sleep all night in your soul kitchen." Morrison was actually a big foodie and loved eating, so this song is as much about his love for food as it is about the restaurant. The Crystal Ship. A lot of people think it is about drugs, but it is not. It came from poetry in Morrison's notebooks, written after he split up with his girlfriend Mary. Actually, almost every love song Morrison wrote for the Doors is about her. So yes, no drugs here, just a heartbreak. 20th Century Fox. The song was written during the band's early days, playing at venues like the London Fog and the Whisky Go-Go. The lyrics were inspired by a woman seen by the band members on the Sunset Strip. Alabama Song. That's a song that the band covered. It was suggested by Ray's wife Dorsey, but her role went far beyond just giving musical advice. She was one of the most important women in the Doors' early life, just like Ronnie Hayron. But Dorsey's role went even further. She was the only one working and paying the bills in the early days, supporting the band financially while they were struggling. She even let Jim move in with her and Ray, giving him a place to live so he could focus on writing lyrics and performing. Without her guidance and support, the Doors might not have survived those crucial years. Light My Fire. A song by Robbie Krieger, who wrote it in response to Jim Morrison's request for original songs with universal, timeless themes. Robbie was inspired by the Rolling Stones song Play with Fire and chose to focus on the elements of fire. Ray Manzarek created the iconic organ intro and Jim Morrison added the funeral pyre, so the second verse. Backdoor Man. That's just another cover. I Look at You. Doesn't have a specific story, but its origins trace back to the early 1966 when the Doors, needing money, were hired to create a background music for a Ford customer service training film. The band jammed and composed this song. Take It As It Comes. This song was inspired by a meditation teacher that Jim briefly observed during yoga classes. The message is pretty simple, just take life as it comes and don't stress too much. As I mentioned before, the whole band was attending meditational classes even before the band was formed. But Jim, on the other hand, was much more skeptical about it. He didn't really believe in astrology or meditation and often just made fun of others for being into those things. So even though Jim didn't really believe in meditation, it at least inspired him to write this song. The End. At first, the song was about Jim's breakup with his girlfriend Mary, but as the band kept playing it at the Whisky Go-Go, it grew into a much longer, more dramatic piece. Jim used to say that the song was open to interpretation, so everyone could find their own meaning in it. Now, looking back, this is the album that captured Jim Morrison at his most magnetic period and set the Doors on the path to becoming one of the most iconic rock bands in history. Right after the release, the band almost immediately went back into the studio to record their second album, Strange Days. But that's a story for another video. The Doors' debut album is my favorite album. I love absolutely every single song on it. I can listen to it every day and never get bored. What I like the most is how versatile it is. Almost everyone has a different take on this record. For most people, it is just pure sex, drugs, and rock and roll. For some, it is just a cool music to show off that you are not like everybody else. And for others, it is just poetry, the artistic masterpiece of Jim Morrison. And for many, it is a mix of all of that. There is one thing I don't like about this album, and that's the fact that it made people see the Doors only as a psychedelic rock band. That label stuck, and it is part of the reason some of their later albums got very unfair criticism. But enough from me, now I want to hear from you. What do you think about The Doors' debut album? Which song is your favorite and why? Leave your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to read them. And like always, thank you for watching and goodbye.